Yeah, this is the book, The Spy Who Lost Her Head. I'm going to be talking about this one today because it's the first published book, and it's a completely loony book. It's unpretentiously loony. There's nothing which is serious at all about it. It's about a detective, but it's all spoofed up. So the detective's from the Buffalo Belt in our country, and the more she goes out and tries to solve things, the more things turn topsy-turvy, and she gets just about everything wrong. So it actually started, it's spoofing it because I love the detective genre, and the detective, I mean, doesn't it strike you that the detective always gets it right, right till the last 11 pages of the book. Everybody's got the clues, but nobody's piecing them together, and then he suddenly finally just comes up, he gets everybody around him, and he just joins all the dots and gets it right. So I thought it would be fun to have a real person, someone who's not getting it right, who's just like fumbling around like the rest of us, and so the audience is joining in this game. And the humor is because sometimes the audience knows that Gulabi, who is the protagonist, is actually going up the wrong lane. But so the author knows, the audience knows, and we are watching Gulabi go there, and she makes a fool of herself. We laugh with her, we laugh at her, and then somehow in a chase involving a villain called the King and the Queen, she manages to get a head, a severed head. That's how it starts it off, and there's a lot of excitement, a lot of wrong dead ends, and the end of it all, somehow she manages to solve the whole piece and bring it together. That's the book. Yeah, so there is situational humor, okay, which but I think the main humor, at least, so I've written the book, but from the feedback that I've been getting from reviews and mails is that the individual herself, the personality is a funny one, and the incongruity of her, because she's dressed in these brightly colored parrot green saris, and and she's doing very cerebral things, and she thinks of herself as she's brimming with self-confidence. There's nothing to be looked down upon, okay. So and she's a person who is so sure that she's doing the right thing when she's actually going completely wrong. So and there's a lot of language. There's a lot of language humor that comes in. A lot of double entendres and stuff like that. I was born and brought up in Jamshedpur, which is now in Jharkhand, but was in Bihar at that point of time. Yeah, so I was brought up with women who were very spunky. They sat and they on their charpais and they chewed pan, and their jokes were hysterical, hilarious. So they completely, though it's seen as a very chauvinistic place, they actually rule the roost. But and their story is not told except in in very pathetic, pathos and things like that. The fun element, and there's a lot of ribald humor. There's nothing very sanctimonious about them. So I loved being with those kind of women, and so I brought this kind of a girl from there into very urban, sophisticated a metro, and that's the imbalance that causes the fun, I think, a lot of time. So there is a bit of stereotyping that we all go through here, okay. We do in urban society consider somebody who doesn't speak the Queen's English very well, we slot them sometimes, okay, or there's somebody who hasn't had the level of education that we have had, we again slot them and stereotyping. So it comes from there, and it completely turns the stereotype on its head, because Gulabi is the one who turns out to be the victor, because she is completely, and she is not ashamed of who she is. She's confident, she's fun, she absorbs whoever comes into her life, the ups and downs, and she, with her rolling pin and her brinjal fry, she tries to convert everyone, and the strength is very obvious to us in the end. So we start off from a point where, we are actually almost laughing at that person, and we end up admiring her. Well, she's I'd like to think she's autobiographical a bit, because she follows my journey. I came from there and I went into exactly like she did in Bombay, but that's where the similarity ends. She's based on a lot of people, a lot of people. In fact, I've even had some people write in and say that, is this what, is that what is there something of me in her? But nobody, as it says in the book, entirely fictional. Yeah. So these are my two favorite genres really. I love the thriller, detective, a bit of espionage, and I love humor, Dave Barry, Nick Hornby. And it struck me that in India we don't have a homegrown detective. We have people who are trying to copy the trench coat serious thinkers, even if they have Indian names, but they are thinking Western. They are not using the Indian logic and the Indian way of thinking. And so you have the Scandinavian deep, dark detective novels which reflect their kind of environment. You have the British countryside, the cozy little countryside where there is a worm in the whole thing. And what about India, which is so vibrant and full of different kinds of people and, exciting, colorful. Shouldn't our detectives somehow reflect this? Why should they be, deep, dark, thinking men in the mode? So, having said that, it wasn't logical. It wasn't that logical. It just came. Oh yeah. So it's set. There's a double setting. It's set in Bombay. Okay, I'm going to continue to call it Bombay and not Mumbai, because that's where really it is, and it takes you back to her village. So there is a lot of humor that comes from. We take her back to where she talks about the cows and the mango trees, and there is in Bombay, but it's not the serious, seedy side of Bombay that you see. It is the daily person's life. It is the high-rise living. It is the little street bazaars. It's that kind of thing. It's a mix of those. It would seem so, yeah. So that's intentional, though. She fumbles and she bumbles, and in the end, I must confess there is something Agatha Christie or Sherlock Holmesy about, or the way she comes up with it, because she is promised to all detective genre readers. In the end, does need to have some genius. That's obvious because she's a different side of person. But the way she does it, her process is completely loony. It's lunatic. So the way she gets at, or she arrives at a breakthrough is not the logical way, So she puts pieces together based on her native wisdom, and she does get it in the end as of a very roundabout logic that she uses. I was very excited with the response that it got, because I have people writing to me and they all try to write Gulabi English, So this was the first really major book that I've written, and a lot has followed after that, and a lot of attention the book's got, because it's slotted in different genre, and what I'd like to mention is the publishers, HarperCollins, opened a page for me on Facebook, and within the first, I think, 2-3 weeks, there were about 3,000 odd fans on it. So yes, so what I'd really like to say is that when I first wrote it and I took it, and there was some skepticism, and said that if you can't write a book like this, you can't do something like this. You stick to one genre, or you try to it's after all commercial. It's a commercial space out there. You really don't know. Start with a book that's not so risky. And the very fact that it still went out and it made its place, I'm excited. Yeah.